because it's this weird mystical art. So what I want to talk about today is detailing and retopology, and when and why you should and shouldn't use ZRemesher. This is a topic I see coming up a lot, especially amongst artists and new artists and students. So we're going to go over that. And we're also going to talk about kind of like preparing cloth, how to use UVs in your cloth. Like UVs aren't just for texturing; you can use them for modeling as well. So, yeah. So if you've been seeing the streams, you can go to YouTube, you can go to Twitch, you can go to Periscope, you can go to Facebook. You can see all the latest streams, and you can go to cgspectrum.com for any more information. So, yeah, let's get to it. So I have a tunic, a piece of cloth here that I built in a previous stream. So it's all this stuff up here. Don't be scared. We built it bit by bit by bit. I literally went through and built this all in a stream. Took me maybe about 2 hours to do, maybe 3. So it's a lot more. It's not as intimidating as it looks. So one thing I want to address today is UVs. So when Houdini builds these patches, I guess they are called patches, it actually makes UVs intrinsically. So if I can go find one of those planar patches, yeah, so one of these planar patch from curves, if I go and look at this, and I can look at my UVs, let's drop that down so I get some more resource. I'm just gonna view this guy here. Let's see where that is. Yeah, so this little this is the collar, right? So this is the collar patch. If I look at this and I look at my UV editor, so I go to set view, UVs. If we look, it should be, yeah, it's up here. So each one of these patches builds its own UV. Right? So in that, all that information flows all the way down to our end piece here. So if I view this, here's my UV for let's see, where is the rest of this? Yeah. So there's my UV for, these are all my UVs for my cloth. So let's go look at let's see. So I think I ran so here earlier I ran a clean. So I cleaned out all of my UVs. So we're gonna have to do something a little bit tricky. I'm gonna have to grab, so if I come here, if I go above this, so there's the UVs for my body. So I ran this in 2 separate passes. So I ran one pass here, which is the body of my tunic, and I ran another pass here that is the or here, that's the collar of my tunic. So no worries. I don't want to have to resim anything, so we'll just have to rebuild some stuff to get this back together. So let's go ahead and do that now. So I want, let's see, I want this information. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make some nulls on here that is going to hold that information, and then we can just copy that information together later. So let's do that. And actually what I can do is on this clean, so I'm looking at material UV here. So this clean, if I select this, all that goes away because I got rid of all my attributes. So I'm just gonna keep around that material UV. Now, this isn't gonna flow down all the way into here because of this guy, right? So my vellum drape, I'm saving whatever was coming into that off the disk and I'm reading it. So that doesn't have that information. But the information is... Oh, hello Ronnie, how you doing? How you doing? Oh, from India. Awesome. Great. Welcome, welcome. So what I want to do is I'm going to, let's see. I want to keep that material UV attribute. So I have this material UV. So I'm going to keep that. So I'm going to say up caret material UV. So now I have that. So that's that. And so this is going to flow down into this connectivity and all this other stuff. And then over here, these are the UVs for my collar. So here is the UVs for everything. Now, what's going to happen is when I come down into my vellum cloth, that's going to go away. That's going to disappear because I'm reading that from disk. But I know that, let's go back to our scene view. I know that this model and this model, even though they're in different positions, are exactly the same. So what I can do is I can transfer my UV information from this model to that model. So let's do that. I'm going to do this in a completely separate context as well. So let's do this. So I'm going to do put a null here, just so I can grab this. I'll call this out UV. And I'll do this as well. So I'll put a null here. I'm going to call this out drape. Great. So I'm just making these nulls so I can grab them in another geometry. So I'm going to pop back up here. Let's see. This was some testing I was doing, so we can get rid of that. And this is my cute little quilted pig head from last week. So we can see a little quilted pig head from last week. If you want to see how I made this, you can go to my stream from last Sunday. This was a really fun one. I've been quilting everything since I made that thing. I see that pattern everywhere. Okay, so let's go back to my tunic. Let's make sure I'm looking at the end tunic, just for keep everything nice and clean. So for this, I'm going to make a new geometry. Right, and this is going to be, we'll call this tunic detail. All right, so I'm going to do an object merge, and I'm going to go get that. So my tunic here. So I'm going to grab my out UV. Let's accept. I'm going to do hide other objects. Yeah, so there's my out UV. So it's kind of crazy, but it's got my UV data in it. And then I'm going to do another object merge. And I'm going to go grab that out drape. And actually, I could just use tunic. We'll see what this. Yeah, accept. So this is my tunic, and so if I go back and once again just to make sure that I have the right stuff. So tunic, no UVs, and then this guy should have all my UVs. Let's see. There we go. So that's material UV there. Okay. So good. So no UVs, material UVs. Cool. So actually I'm going to stay in this view for a bit. So the first thing I want to do is I don't want to call this material UV. I just want to call it UV because I'm lazy and I don't want to keep on typing in material UV over and over and over again. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do an attribute rename. Attribute rename. So here I'm going to rename material UV to just UV. So we can see that disappears because we're still looking for material UV. If I go back to auto, should see that pop up. There we go. Yeah. There we go. So UV point. Sometimes you have to toggle that little button a few times. So there's my UV for my points. Okay, great. So now what I want to do is I want to put these UVs, I basically want to lay them out, right? Because all my UVs if you know anything about CG or texturing in this case, your UVs need to be between 0 and 1. So that's why this square goes from 0 to 1 and 0 to 1. So this is my U direction and this is my V direction. So I'm just going to use a UV layout node. Okay. So there's my UV layout node. Okay. One thing I do want to check before I go any further, I want to make sure 100% before I go any further that these two models are the same model. So one way I use to check this is I use a blend shape. So I'm going to go back to my perspective viewports, and I'm just going to make a blend shape node. Make sure that these two models are the same. Yeah, there we go. So if they weren't the same, this thing would turn into a big, big pile of mess. Like everything would get all stretched and broken. But because these are the same model, they're just in different positions, I can blend between them. And look at that, even the color blends between them. So it blends everything, blends all attributes. If I didn't want the color to change, like up here, attributes, I could just do a P, and then it won't blend the color anymore. So that's pretty cool. Everything is data inside of Houdini. Okay, good. So I've verified that both of these models are exactly the same. So, let's see. Where was I? Oh yeah, UVs. All right, so if I go to my UV layout, it'll put those there. So we can do a number of things with this UV layout. I don't like that it's laying down on the side. I kind of want it to be laying up and straight. So I'm going to change axis alignment to just none, and that'll put them straight up and down. The other thing I don't want is I really don't like it when the UVs are right up against this border. So I want to put what's called padding in here. So I'm going to say 16, and I'm going to say apply padding to border. So that'll push that up about 16 units. Okay, cool. So now I have my UVs, but my UVs, and actually what I can do is now that I know that they're the same object, I can take this guy. I can just do that blend shape again. Do this. I go here. Let's see if this. Yeah, there we go. So I'm using this guy's position to influence this guy's shape. So this guy had all the UV information, and this guy had the position information, and I'm combining them together with a blend shape. Really, really powerful stuff, guys. Incredibly powerful stuff. All right, so I basically fixed this so that this now has proper UVs. So that's dope. Great. Awesome. Okay. All right. So that's preparing a model for UVs, preparing a cloth out of Houdini with UVs, and we're going to use these in a minute. So the next thing I want to talk about is what I want to talk about next. Oh, yeah. So getting stuff out of Houdini and into ZBrush. Sorry. Couldn't think about that for a second. And the other thing I want to talk about is ZRemesher, because this is going to be a topology-centered talk or stream. So ZRemesher, I feel like it's a great tool when used properly. In my opinion, and there are many, many opinions in computer graphics and in art, my opinion is that geometry from ZRemesher should be used as kind of like an intermediate mesh. So it's when you're almost done with your concept sculpt and you need to start really, really adding detail. And so what ZRemesher does is it puts loops and polygons where you need more detail and it leaves the rest of the model alone. Now, the automated kind of nature of this really bothers me. Like, there aren't that many controls with ZRemesher. There aren't, like, you just press the button and it does what it does. There's a few buttons and things you can toggle, but overall it's just it's out of your hands. And I'll show you a classic an example of what I'm talking about. So I'm going to import a so this is the same tunic from ZBrush. Oops. Okay. So this is the same tunic that I was just working on in Houdini. So I just exported that as an OBJ, and I'll show you how to do that in a minute. And I'm going to say displacement. No, not displacement. I want to say display. I want to say double. Okay. So this comes in as all triangulated mesh, which triangulated meshes, which in Houdini is fine, but in ZBrush it's no likey, right? So generally the first thing we want to do is go up and press ZRemesher. But what I want to do here is I want to keep each one of these panels separate, right? So if I go, and right now I haven't welded them together. So if I go to brush, move, topological, and I grab one of these panels, right? So that's not welded at all. The problem is that ZRemesher wants welded things. If I go to geometry, and I go to ZRemesher, and I just say ZRemesh, I'm going to get discontinuous geometry. I'm going to get this, right? This stuff. Okay. So how do we fix this? I'm going to undo that. So how do we weld everything together yet still keep our panels? And the answer is polygroups. So I'm going to go and I'm going to say polygroups, and I'm going to say auto group. And because all these things are their own shell, like they're not connected, it will make a polygroup for each one of these. And I'll show you how to do this in Houdini as well, so that you don't have to do this in ZBrush. Or if you prefer to do it in Houdini or in ZBrush, it's all the same. It's all the same idea, right? So what that auto groups is doing is it's figuring out all the polygons that are connected and putting them in a group, right? So all this stuff is connected, so it's putting it in a group. All this stuff is connected, so it's putting it in a group. All that stuff is connected, so it's putting it in a group. So now what I can do is I can go up to my modify topology and under geometry, I'm going to say modify topology. I'm going to say weld points. So now all these points are welded together. Okay. So what I can do now I can come up to ZRemesher and I can do ZRemesh. So what I want to do is I want to do keep groups, and I want to turn smooth groups all the way off. So I'm going to press that. And so I get something like this. And at first glance, you're like, oh man, this looks great. Done. No, that's not, we're not done. So even though ZRemesher looks good on, like, from a distance, right, this looks great. It's like, oh man, look at that super clean topology. But until we start to get a little bit closer, like, we get like these kind of weird poles here and here. And we get spiraling geometry. Right, we get like the strange pole here, the strange pole here, this weird kind of trap there, and it's doing its best to, you know, approximate your geometry. What this is doing is it's trying to put loops where folds are. It's trying to put a loop here to hold that information. It's trying to put a loop here. So if I was doing a purely sculptural piece, this would be great, because then I could divide this and reproject it onto my original, and I would have detail where I needed detail. But when you're going to production, when you're going to animation, when you're going to anything that needs to move or go to another apartment, this just does not work. And I'll show you why. I'm going to go to the Z modeler, and I want to make my brush size a little bit smaller. And I'm going to hover over a face. I'm going to press spacebar, and I'm going to say polygroup, and I'm going to say group loop. So this will basically make a polygroup out of whatever loop it finds. So let's just grab one of these loops and press group. Look at that. Some weird spiraling. It just kind of goes everywhere. So let's see where some of these go. So that one's not too bad. Look at that. That one just kind of goes off to the side. This one loops up and around. This one loops straight down. Like I would expect this to stay in the middle of the body, and yet it goes way over here. So you can see that we get very, very strange results. This is fine for sculpting, but it's not good for, you know, this one. Look at this one. It loops all the way around and comes back down here. So this isn't great for production type stuff. So I will tell you this: if you're a hobbyist, if you're a student, and you think that ZRemesher will solve all your problems, it will not. It is a wonderful piece of technology. It is amazing for what it does, but it is automated. And as an artist, and I'm a control freak. I want everything. I want to control everything on my mesh. I want to place everything on my mesh. And does it take longer? Yes. Is it kind of annoying? Yes. Is it kind of boring? No, because I take it like Zen. Like when I start retopologizing stuff, my brain just kind of shuts off, and you just kind of go. And I'll show you how to do this. Okay, so this is actually best case scenario, right? This is best case scenario. ZBrush with all these wacky loops, but it actually ZRemeshes your object. So what's worst case scenario? Worst case scenario is what I'm about to show you now. So I'm going to just re-import another mesh. Hello, Rushback 99. So I'm gonna say the ZRemesh failed. That's what I called it. Okay, so this is another version of that tunic I made, and it's got a few more wrinkles and things like that. It's a little bit higher resolution. Let me see if brush, move, topological is this one. Can't remember if I welded this one together or not. Yeah, this one's actually already welded together. This came welded together out of Houdini. Okay. Looks almost identical or very, very similar to the one that we had before. I have like these little arm loops, and the cowl is a little bit more square, but in general, it's almost the exact same piece of geometry. So now what I can do, so let's do that exact same settings. So let's go to geometry, ZRemesher, keep groups, no polish, and say ZRemesh. So you're like, oh yeah, that looks good. That looks good. Oh, what's happening here? This. Sometimes I don't know what causes this. I don't know what causes the ZRemesher to fail this bad, but sometimes it happens because it's a completely automated system, right? Like look at this. It's making these really tangled pieces of geometry here. It's making this awfulness here, right? So what do you do when this is if you rely on ZRemesher for your topology and that's all you know how to do, you're kind of, you know, up a creek right now. You're like, well, what do I do? Like, what if, like, and you could say, oh, well, I'll just go and rework the cowl, or I'll rebuild that in some other way. What if this is, you know, approved by a client and you can't change the design? So this is where knowing how to, you know, retopologize by hand and using and use some of these tricks that I'm going to show you today can come in really, really handy. They can be absolute lifesavers. So this is ZRemesher it's a great piece of technology. I'm not knocking it. It does a great job for what it is, but it is not meant. Ask any production modeler. It is not for production level models. Okay, so how do we deal with this? How do we fix this? How do we move forward with this? So I'll show you two techniques. One kind of still uses ZRemesher, but in a kind of trickier way, and then I'll go into actual by hand retopology in Houdini. Cool, great, awesome. Oh, great, thank you very much. Okay, so let's go back to Houdini. All right, so this is our our mesh here, and let me make sure I still have my, let's see here, I want to make sure I still have that weld attribute. Class patch. No matter. Actually, I do want to see if I can get that weld back. So let's go back to my tunic. And let's see. Do you have your welds? Ah, okay. Here. I kept my UV, my VM Cuspego, my material UV, but I got rid of my weld. So I want to keep my weld around as well. And that'll come in. I'll show you why that I need that in a minute. Because if I come up here, I can, where is it? Yeah, here's this weld attribute. So I want that weld attribute as well. And the great thing about this is, because I'm kind of stealing this guy, not this guy, right? I'm actually using this, right? So anything I do into here is going to flow out into that other geometry. So I'm going to say caret weld. So this should give me my weld attribute here. Let's see. Yeah, there's my weld attribute. And so that's all going to come out here into this. I should get weld as well. Yeah, so there's my weld attribute, and that's the one that we're using. So I'm coming here. Now, over here, I should have, yeah, there's my weld attribute. This is why I love Houdini, man. Oh, I love it. It's great. Like you can just, like, it holds information so well. It is so non-destructive, and it saves you so many times. Okay, great. So I wanted that weld information back. So let's get that. Drop that down. Okay. So right now, all these pieces of geometry are, they have UVs, and but they're all broken apart. So what I can do is I can show you this. I can do an exploded view. And so we can see it's going to do like this kind of like Iron Man suit up type thing. So these are all my broken away pieces. Okay, so I know all that stuff is broken. So the reason I wanted that weld attribute back is if I now do a vellum post process, by default, this thing says apply welds. So if I plug this in again, right, I should see. Oh no, my welds are broken. Okay, that's fine. I can do a fuse instead of the post process. This is what happens when you when you're talking and building stuff at the same time. So I'm gonna just do a good old fashioned fuse. So if I come back to my exploded view, now no matter what I do to this, let's see, there's my fuse. So this is now all one chunk. So I can just kind of fuse everything together. I think what the vellum post processes does is it's specifically looking to say you fuse with you and you fuse with you. But these guys are all sitting directly on top of one another. So a good old-fashioned fuse works just fine. So this is just to make sure that all my my geometry is working as I want. Okay, so first way to use ZRemesher, this is also kind of a hack, right? I can't stress enough that you should always, whenever you can, remesh, do your own retopology. Don't let the machine think for you, right? Think for yourself. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to flatten this mesh into its UV information. And the day I found out that you could do this very easy in Houdini was the day I started learning Houdini. Because in Maya, to do this, you need like, I think like a plugin or something. So all I need to do is just tell these points, each one of these points has a UV coordinate attached to it. I can just tell each one of these points to move to their UV coordinates. So we'll see this whole model go to this 0 to 1 to 0 to 1 based on the UVs. And I can do that with one node called an attribute expression. Okay, so the attribute expression works like this. So it says, what type of attribute are you working on? I'm working on points. What attribute are you working on? I'm working on position. Now self just says whatever the points were when they were coming into this object. So I'm just going to get rid of that. So I'm just going to say P equals at UV. Well, actually V at UV. Bam. One line means take each point and put it at its UV position. That's amazing. That's amazing. This blows me away. Every time I do it, it gives me a little bit of joy. Every time. Every single time. Okay, so now how do we do this? So what I'll end up doing is I will ZRemesh this thing and then bring it back in here and put it back on this thing. And I'll show you how we do that. Okay, so I'm going to export this out as an OBJ. So I'm just going to right click and say save, say geometry. I'm just going to chuck that on my desktop. And I'm going to call this Stream Tunic Flat. I'm going to let that cook for a second. All right, and now I'm going to pop over to ZBrush, and I'll just overwrite this guy because that was just for demonstration purposes. I'm going to say import, and I'm going to say Stream Tunic Flat. Open. So there we go. So there's that flat piece of geometry. So now what I'm going to do is I'll just ZRemesh. I'm going to ZRemesh this. And actually, let's just do auto groups. Not that we really need to. I'm going to come into geometry, ZRemesher. I don't need to keep groups now because they're all kind of separate. Actually, no, I'll go ahead and keep groups. That's fine. And they are at about, active point says I'm about 6.5, so I'm going to do maybe 10. So 10,000 polygons. I'm going to turn off adaptive because I want really square polygons. So I'm going to say ZRemesh. And so I get this. So still not fantastic, but better than what it was. Like this is actually, I'll actually give it credit. This is actually pretty nice. This is a little weird. These guys are pretty easy to remesh. This is really, really strange in the middle here. So one thing I'll do is there are two different algorithms for ZRemeshing. There's the regular one, and if you hold down Alt, it'll give you a different one. So yeah, that one's a little bit different. So let's hold down Alt and do ZRemesher. Alt. Okay, so I can do that. The other thing I can do is I can just press same and just keep ZRemeshing this thing and see what it does. Yeah, it's just getting weirder and weirder and weirder. So this is still a hack, but let's turn off keep groups and see what that gives me. Yeah, same thing. So I think I'm gonna go with the alt version. This seems to work. Ooh, or not. Make sure you check everything. So this is my gripe with ZRemesher. It's really like, it's just like, this is what you get. All right, this is what you get. Okay, so this is my ZRemeshed flat. So what I want to do is I want to take this now and spit this back over to Houdini and put it back on my drape. So let's see. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and this is, that's 4. So that's not going to line up. But I don't really care about it lining up, because these are pieces of cloth, and they're, you know, they're not gonna be coincident. Okay, so let's do that. So I'm gonna export this as tunic flat ZRemesher. Okay, so boom, boom. So I'm just gonna grab a file node, and I'm gonna go grab that tunic mesh ZRemesher, and let this cook for a second. And so there's my ZRemeshed object. So now I have correspondence. So these guys are all in the same spot. So I'll call this this guy. We'll do this. No. I'll do flat. This one's gonna be drape. And this one will be ZRemesher. Okay, so now, how do I get this thing up to this thing? I can use this middle guy, this flat guy, as a conduit, right? Like, this is like my translator. So if this is French and this is German, this is somebody who speaks both. Because this thing has the topology of this, but it has the position of this. So I can use this as a go-through. So there's 2 functions that I'm going to use. And I'm going to write some code to do this. I know a lot of modelers and people are like, oh, I don't want to learn the code. I don't want to learn the code. I don't want to learn the code. Learn the code, right? This is the, you know, it's almost 2021. Children are learning to code now. If a child can learn to code, anybody can learn to code, unless it's a really, really smart kid. And this is not even that much code. I think it's going to be like 6, maybe 6 lines. 6 lines of code, and you get to be a CG wizard. So I think it's a small price to pay. So I'm going to use a point wrangle for this. Point wrangle. Wrangle. Love saying that. So in general in Houdini, and I wish somebody would have told me this, the left port always wins. Almost every, like, if you want to keep something, that goes into the left port. So the left port generally goes in and it comes out the bottom. Everything else is for auxiliary stuff. Get a code. Nice. Well done. So I'm going to take my, I want to keep this, right? Because this is what I want to affect. So I'm going to plug that into my first port. And then I'm going to plug these 2 guys in my second and third port. So before I go into this, I should probably talk about the difference between user-based UVs and parametric UVs. So user-based UVs is what we've been doing so far, right? We've been using these are UVs that you would think of in a traditional sense. They you know, this is what you would do in Maya. This is what you would do in Blender. Generally, for texturing, you use this. There's another type of UV available, and that is called a parametric UV. And what a parametric UV is it's intrinsic to the surface. So if I have a surface like this, and I have some surface points, So we have the two types of UV data. Now there's a UV data that we put on the point, right? So that's what this is. This is that UV data. There's another type of UV data that lives on the surface, or actually almost inside of the surface. And in Houdini, these are called primitives. Every primitive has a number. So this is primitive 0, this is primitive 1, this is primitive 2, this is primitive 3. Each one of those primitives has a U and V direction. Okay? So this is UV00, this would be UV11, this would be UV10, and this would be UV01. Right? Just like any other vector-based type thing that you're thinking of. And I know some of you are cringing right now if you're still watching and you aren't just like, oh, math, run away. Right? You need to learn this stuff. As a professional in CG, you need to know how this stuff works. You need to know how your craft is made, right? It's just like being a musician, right? You need to learn how to take care of your instrument. You need to know how your instrument works. You need to know simple stuff like scales and notes and frequency and vibration, all that stuff. Same stuff for CG artists. So, if I wanted a point in the center of this, it would be U 0.5, 0.5. Okay? And that point is somewhere in space. And I can get that. I can ask. It's like, hey, where is 0.5, 0.5 of primitive 2 of this object? Okay? So there's two functions that are going to do this. One is called XYZ dis, and the other one is called prim UV. And this UV that they're talking about is not this UV. It's this UV. Okay? So this one fetches information, and this one recalls. All right, so let's see how this works. Okay, so let's look at the first one, XYZ dist. So I'm going to type in XYZ dist. Thank you, Houdini. And I'm going to just select this, and I'm going to press F1 to bring up the documentation for this. Great. So, XYD is this. It says finds the distance of a point to a geometry. It does that, but that's not what I use it for. Here is where the magic happens. This is what I want. So it's taking in a geometry to look at. It's taking in a point to sample, and then it's going to fill this primitive number, and it's going to give me, it's also going to fill this UV vector. This is incredibly powerful, and I don't know of any other software that you can do this in so directly and so quickly. You can just like type this in, and it like bam, just gives you back the information. It's crazy. Can't believe they let you do this, right? So I'm going to need a couple of variables. Now, variables are just buckets of information. I need an integer bucket, a vector bucket, and a float bucket. So I'm going to go ahead and make those. So I'm going to say int. I'm going to call this prim. So that's going to be my, I'm going to say this prim num. This is my primitive number. I'm going to say float. Actually, no, vector. That's going to be my primitive UV. And float, it's going to be a distance. Okay. So now I'm going to say dist equals XYZ dist. And so the geometry I want to pull this information from is this guy. I want to know for each point what is your primitive number and UV coordinate. Because then, because this and this, because my flat and my drape are the same geometry, I can use this information to recall that information. So remember, one fetches, one recalls. Okay, so my geometry is going to be my first port. So my second port, 0 and 1. So this is going to be, let's see, 1. My point that I'm sampling is going to be at P. So for each one of these points, it's going to sample. It's like sample that point, sample that point, sample that point, sample that point for every single one. And then I need to fill my primitive number and my primitive UV. Sure we don't get any errors? Great, we don't get any errors. So now, after this line, my primitive number for each point is going to have the number of the primitive that it's sitting closest to. It's also going to have the UV value, that UV value that goes between 0 and 1. So now what I can do is I can just deform this thing back to my drape. So I can say, I'm going to say at P, so I'm resetting my position value, equals prim UV. Right, so let's look at the signature for this bad boy. Great. So, prim UV, geometry. It's the geometry I'm looking at. The attribute I want to recall, the primitive number, and the UV. We have all this information. We have all this information. So, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, so the geometry I want to look at is port 0, 1, 2. The attribute I want to recall is my point attribute, and then prim UV and prim ID and prim UV. So this prim number, prim UV, grab those. And if I've done everything correct, we should see this geometry pop up. So as soon as I turn this on, I should see, boom. So there is my ZRemesher geometry on my mesh. So if you were having some a problem, right, with that part that was broken here, you could ZRemesher this and get to a decent result. Cool. So that's one way. That's kind of like the bootleg ZRemeshing way to do things. And the other thing, so now because this guy is flat, now this guy doesn't have any UVs on him, right? Because when you ZRemesh things, it destroys the UVs. It's the other thing that kind of irks me about it. Like, there's no UV information on this. But because this is all flat, I can just give this UV information. So I'm just going to do a planar project. I'm just going to project UV information onto this guy. So I'll do UV project. I love this, that you can just add in information after the fact and everything will flow down. And I'm going to project along the graphic. I'm going to do initialize. I'm just going to do best plane. So let's say initialize. So if I look at this, if I do a UV quick shade, so there are my UVs there, and that's going to flow down into my UVs here. And because this is completely flat, I'm going to get very, very minimal stretching and whatnot. Now the stretching is here is because we had these darts in here. We had these holes that we pulled together. Right, my densities are a little different. Let's see, how much time I got? All right, I think I'm doing good on time. Doing good on time. Great. So now I could export this back out and throw this into, put this into ZBrush. Okay. So that's kind of using, that's getting around, like if ZBrush is giving you like really weird like crumpling or bunching, and you have UVs, especially with cloth, works really well, because most cloth you get free UVs in Houdini, and you get free UVs out of Marvelous Designer. So this isn't just a UV Houdini thing; it's just a cloth generation thing. So those are like the two biggest cloth generators out there. Okay, so the last technique I'm going to show you is just straight up hand crank topology, retopology, which is I think is the best option. But I'm going to show you a technique using this, like this technique, this guy here. You know what? I like this so much, I'm going to save it. I'm going to save this as a preset. I use it so much. I'm going to save it as a preset because I'm tired of typing this in all the time. So I'm going to right-click this gear, and I'm going to say Save Preset. I'm going to call this Prim UV. So I never have to type this again. Cool. Awesome. Okay, so let's go back to our draped geometry. So this is all split up. So what I can do is I'm going to actually remesh this, not remesh, I'm going to retopologize this by hand, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it a chunk at a time. So to do that, what I'm going to do is I basically need polygroups, just like I had in ZBrush. Right? So and this is why I love going back and forth between packages and learning new packages and doing stuff like this in streams, is that I get to show people and remind myself that there's no magic. There's no magic. It's all the same stuff. It's just kind of wrapped and packaged differently. So what I'm going to do is I want to check to see, just like Houdini, just like ZBrush does. I want to check what of these things are connected, and there's actually a node for that. It's just called connectivity. So I'm going to plug this in. And everything, or not everything, but most things in Houdini are attribute based. So this is going to make an attribute called class. I don't know why they called it class, but it's called class, right? So it's going to go, and for each piece that's connected, we'll get a class node, or a class attribute. So all of this is connected, so that will be like 0. This would be 1. This would be 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. So I can visualize this just like I can in ZBrush. I'm going to use a color. So my color node, I'm going to say random from attribute, and I'm going to just say class. Boom. Polygroups. Just like I had before. And even if I want to do the thing, like I know in Houdini you can, or not, I keep on messing these up. In ZBrush you can press that. If you keep pressing the auto group, you get like kind of like this disco look. I can do that in here too. Disco tunic. It's just changing what random color gets put on what. Okay, so now how do we use this? So I want to do this one chunk at a time. So I'm going to use a blast. So I'm going to take this blast, and I'll just say delete non-selected. So that'll keep everything. So what I'll do is I'll say at class equals 0. And I'll say points. So that's my 0th point. And if I 2, 3, 4, 5. This is, or 4. So I can retopologize this guy without having the other ones. And the great thing about this is I can cycle through this. I can cycle through this geometry on my topology. So let's do that. So I said, let's start with the front because that's the most important part. So what I like to do before I start any topology is I start to try to look at, actually let me bypass this real quick. I try to look at like what my geometry could feasibly look like. So, so let's pull up my handy dandy little drawing tool here. Alright, so generally how I approach my topology is I try to start as simple as possible. Now with this top piece is mildly complex, but we can work through that. So I try to think about cutting things into 4s first. So 1 here, so I cut this in half. So that's 2, and then I'll cut that in half, and I'll cut that in half. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 spans like that. And this actually lines up quite nicely with this tunic. So these spans will come up like that. So do the same thing for the arm. So ends middle, half, half. So I might need to do a few more spans for the arm just because the arm is so big and the neck is so wide. So maybe instead of 4, so 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe I'll do 8. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So I think these two can fuse together like that. And I'm going to keep this going down possibly this way. So I start like this because it's just easier to draw stuff than to get into everything. So I think this, I'm going to keep this here. And I think maybe this guy will come down here. Yeah. So I'll fuse that together. And then this can come over like that. Yeah. And then this can come over like that. Okay. I think I got a good idea where I'm going to go with this. So it's always good to just, even if I don't stick to this plan, it's always good to just have a mental map of where you're going to go. So let's clear all this out. All right. So the tool in Houdini for building topology is surprisingly called Topple Build. So I'm going to make a Topple Build node. So and so this is this side is if you have kind of incoming geometry. So I'm just going to put a null there. Just have nothing going into it. You don't have to have incoming geometry. You don't have to do this null, but I like to do it just to remind me that something should go in there. And then this side is what you're going to project onto. So I'm going to click it and go into there. So when I click this, it disappears. So I need to template this guy. So this is a little hard to see. So one other thing you can do is if I'll go to here. Right, and I can actually make this in another context. So let's go up. Let's hide this guy. And I'm going to make a new geometry. I'll call this rebuild or topple. Actually, no. I think I will do it all in one thing. That's fine. Yeah, let's do it all in one thing. Back up a little bit. Getting ahead of myself. So yeah, there we go. All right. So it's kind of hard to see, and that's just one of the things. This is one of the things they could definitely do better is to work on this visualization, because all this in here is a little weird. So let's just go and let's start drawing stuff. Okay, so I want, and actually I'm going to turn this back on, so that'll help with my visualization. There we go. So I can just see just the front. So I want to put those spans in. So I'm going to do, so with Topple Build, I'm going to press Enter. So I have 4 modes. I have Build, Slide, Cut, Brush, and Smooth. And so I'm going to start here. So I'm going to put down a point and start drawing. So I want 1 here. That's 2. That's 3. And 4. So to end this, you middle mouse and that'll go away. So I find it very strange because it doesn't operate like the rest of Houdini does. It's actually operating a lot like Maya, which is good and bad in some ways. So I'm just going to kind of push this stuff around until it gets right into the edge. Push these in. And I have my nice little center line here, so I can push that around. I can also just grab points and move them. I think at this point it's probably easier to do that. So there's that section, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to take, and I'm just going to click on this edge, and that'll give me a new edge. Grab that, middle mouse, grab this edge, and grab that edge. I think I said I want this one to be over as well. And this will come to here, leave, and yeah, so I think I'm going to continue this down. So I'm going to grab that and move that down there. And I start as broad as I can. Always start as big as I can. So that's 1, 2, 3. If I hold down Control, I can rotate this face. And let's put that right about there, and I'll finish this one off here. All right, and I'll go back in and refine this. So I want to make sure all these kind of these edge parts are right up against the edge where I want them. So anytime I see something like this, where like I'm not getting kind of the fidelity I want, I'll go ahead and I'll just throw in an edge loop. So I'm going to hold down Shift and click this, and that'll snap in. Maybe this as well. So that's a pretty big hole. So I'm going to need a few more lines to describe it. So let's go back to my build. And it does feel a little strange. Like some of the controls are a little non-standard, we could say. But like you can see, as soon as I start doing this, like I start talking and I go really quiet. I stop talking and I go really quiet, because like it's just like I'm literally just turning off my brain and like letting it rip. All right, so that's good. Let's bring back this guy. So I want to make sure that this lines up with the front of that collar there. Yeah. And this is what I really like about this workflow, is I can keep turning this thing on and off, and it doesn't affect what's going on down here, which is really, really handy. It's fantastically handy. All right, so let's bring this guy down. Okay, so I got 2 spans there, so I'm going to go into my cut. I'm going to go back to my build, and I'm going to select this guy and this guy by holding down Shift. I'm going to select this guy and this guy, and I'm going to right-click. I'm going to say Bridge. So it'll give me a bridge there. Okay, so now I can just continue this down. So if I double click, it'll select a loop. I can just grab that and cut this. It also will do auto welding. So if I just get these 2 points close, you'll see them tick together. Yeah, so those 2 guys are now welded together. And I think I'll come around, this guy will come around as well. So I'm losing, like I had before here, I'm losing a little bit of area. So I'm going to cut a line here and a line here, and let that projection take over. Okay, so I'm going to bring these 2 straight down the body. So I'm going to hold down Shift and go back to Build, grab this, and I'm just going to bring this straight down. And so here's a great thing about the cut tool. So I have this big tinting here. So if I hold down Shift, I can use my mouse button to roll and add a bunch of extra lines here. And I click, and they'll automatically snap down to the side. So I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to go across. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4 spans there. So I'm going to click, go back to my build, click here, just go straight across the middle. And then I'm going to do a cut. And I wanted how many? 1, 2, 3, 4. Boom. So now I can do, let's see if I can bridge this. So I can grab here, 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 and here, and then there, 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 and there, and say right click and say bridge. That's amazing. Boom, 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 boom. Just filled in that whole section. No fuss, no muss. All right. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab this middle line, and I'm going to right click. I'm going to say straighten. So I'll give me something that's nice and straight, and then I'll say evenly space. So now this middle part is straight and evenly spaced. So now I'll just go through with my smooth brush and just kind of even everything out. So it's not a lot. I mean, maybe that was maybe like 20 minutes of work to get the whole thing done. Not too bad. All right, so I'm going to do this front part. So I'm going to grab, hold down Shift, grab this guy, and this guy. I'm just going to scoot that down just a bit. That. And so when I built this guy, I have this middle line. So what I'm going to do, the other thing I want to do is I want to take this whole line here, and I want to scoot that whole thing over. Because I'm going to use another node in Houdini to just slice and mirror this across. So I just want to be just over the midline so that it cuts that. So I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm just going to come all the way down to the bottom. So I'm just going to click and pull this all the way down here. So I'm going to add some manual loops. Here and here. And then I'll move these guys to be in the correct spot. And then I'll use that multi-loop selection to put everything where it needs to be. Come on, get down there. Sometimes it's stubborn, doesn't want to go down. So these are angled a lot. And so this is why I do this in one big swoop, is so I can get the overall shape worked out, and then I can add in my detail. So there's my center line that I had before. All right, so now I can go into my cut, I can hold down Shift, and I can just push this up as high as it'll go. I wish it would let me go, and it only lets you go to 10. Which is kind of annoying. Sometimes maybe you want more than 10 loops. In this case, I don't think I do. It's actually a good number. So, smooth all this stuff out. So that's that chunk. Okay. So now what I can do is, so I would go through and I would basically do this. I would have I would have a blast for each piece of this. And actually, you know what? That was the hardest part. So how much time do I got? No, I don't have time enough to do the whole thing. Maybe next week. Maybe next week. But you get the idea. So now I have this chunk. So I want to mirror this over. So the mirror is in two steps. So I want to split this directly down the middle. So get rid of everything on one side, and then I'll mirror it. So that is done with a clip. Let's untemplate this guy. So that's done with a clip. And I want my clip to go this way. I want it to go down the x-axis. So x-axis is 1, and y-axis is 0. So we can see, if I toggle this on and off, it's just slicing off that piece and leaving me a nice, clean middle part. Okay, and then I'll just do a mirror. And there I have my finished, or not my finished topology, but the topology for that chunk. So now what I can do is I'm going to do a secondary topple build as well. So I'm going to do another topple build. That same piece. I'll template this again. And I'll just run a smooth over everything to snap everything down. Because this is cloth, it might not be completely symmetrical. So I'm going to grab my smooth brush and make that brush real big, and I'm just going to run it over this entire thing. So now we have this really, really nice. So this could be game ready mesh. Now, if we want to go further, let's go back. I keep on getting this dot here. Where's this dot? There we go. So I had a placement dot left over that was bothering me, but that's a great thing. You can just come in here. Well, let's see. This. Okay, great. So the great thing about this is I can just subdivide this. Wow. I can subdivide this as many times as I need to get the detail that I want. So let's go back up to our blast and see if we're missing anything. So we are missing a little bit. A little bit. Yeah. So another way to get your geometry back is, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna subdivide this maybe twice, maybe once, and I'm gonna project. So when in ZBrush, when you do a project all, right, it's shooting rays from one surface to another. So let me go back and do my little handy dandy drawing thingy. Yeah. So when you do a project all, let's say this is a surface, right? This is your smooth surface, and you want to project onto something that's like this. So what that is doing is called ray casting. So it's saying, all right, it's shooting a ray from this point to that point. And when that ray hits this thing, it says, okay, I need to move there, and I need to move there, I need to move there, and there, and there, and there, and there, and there, and so on and so forth. That's what projection is. That's what projection in ZBrush is. So there's projection in Houdini as well. So cursor, and I'm going to say it's called a ray node. Okay, so once again, left is king. This guy and my original. So that's projecting that detail back on there. If I turn this on and off, you can see it's pulling that new information out. So if I do another smooth, it's going to project with those new points. If I do another smooth, it'll project with those new points. So now we've gone from kind of like a game mesh to, so this is like kind of like a VFX based mesh. Do I have something else templated? So sometimes you get like this strange ghosting, like it's trying to show you the underlying structure. How to fix that? I just put a null on the end of things so I can actually see what's going on. Let's go to smooth shade. So now I'm starting to get like this kind of little bit back here, this little bit back here. So that's great, but now like we still don't have any UVs. Like these UVs don't match. They don't fit. All right, I'm getting some projection errors here, so maybe we can go in and say, maybe we can do minimum distance instead of project rays. That seems to be working a little bit better. Yeah, it's feeling good. Feeling good. Maybe we don't need to go up to 3. Cool. All right. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to, let's see, what else we want to do? Oh, so UVing, right? So like I did before here for this UV quick shade, I started with a flat. So I'm basically going to go backwards now. I started with a flat piece and put it up into space. So there's nothing to say that I can't start with a curved piece and put it down into space. So I can do this same dance. I can do the same song and dance. So let's kind of grab this stuff, move it over here. So let's see. Let's get a little hairy. So that's one thing. Made it before. Okay, so this is our new hotness. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the opposite. So I'm going to take my drape and go to my flat. So actually what I can do, I'm just going to copy this. Being very lazy today. I don't want to retype stuff. I'm going to cut this. All right. So once again, I want to keep this. So now I'm just going to go the opposite. So I want to sample first from my drape here. And second from my flat. So these guys are getting a little bit of stretching. But in general, we're getting a good hit. Usually I don't get this. Not really sure why I'm getting this right now. Doing. Actually, what I'll do, I'm actually going to bypass that subdivide, see what that gives us. We're still getting a missed hit. I'll have to look into why that's doing that. Every now and again, you get some weird. Whenever you're doing, like once I said, whenever you're doing like stuff like this, and when I'm talking, it's always a little difficult. But you can always go back and forth to build stuff, or you could just replace this by hand. But yeah, this is really, really cool. I really enjoy doing this type of work. Okay, last half an hour, detailing. So I did a lot of detailing last class with a lot of code and a lot of stuff like that, and a lot of people were like, "Oh, that's too complicated. Can you just show me a way to do it in ZBrush?" Like, okay, yeah, I can do that. I can show you how to do it in ZBrush. So what I'll do is let's go back and let's turn this on, and we'll go maybe one more. Now that should be good. Don't know why I'm getting that errant point. Or those errant points. Not really sure why those are doing that. No, it's not my project res. I'll come back. I'll if you have the questions on how I fix this, I'll figure out how to do this, and I will loop back to this in the next stream. But detailing in ZBrush. All right, so I'm going to spit this guy out and right click. I'm going to say save geometry. So we'll call this stream tunic retopo. And let's go into ZBrush. All right, so I'll import that. Okay, so this is our retopped mesh and whatnot. So, what I'll do for this guy is actually I'll just use UV Master to give this thing some UVs, because right now it doesn't have any UVs and it's just one plate. And yeah, so I'll do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to plugin. Where is it? UV Master. And I'm just going to say unwrap. Okay, so that gives this guy UVs. And we can see those UVs if I come down to UV map, or not UV map, sorry. Oh yeah, UV map, and I do morph UV. That's my UV. Now, they're doing this weird bump thing to show you where stuff is. If you turn that down to 0 and do morph UV again, 0. And there we go. So that's our UVs. And this is a pretty simple piece of cloth. So it did an all right job. Did an all right job. Right, so let's move back. Now the UVs are going to be important for what I'm about to do next. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to subdivide this, maybe twice, like that. And I want to put a very specific pattern on this. Like I want to put like this diamond pattern of, it's basically the same thing that I did with the little pig head last week. So how I'm going to do that is with surface noise, oddly. So I'm going to go to surface, and then I'm going to go to noise. I'm going to turn that on. And by default, I will get some surface noise. And this is great for just adding some textural detail to your model. Like this looks really nice overall, especially when you have something that's like really detailed and looks really nice, just to add like a little bit of dimpling on the side. But for this, what I'm going to do is I want a very specific pattern. So I'm going to use my noise plug here. So I actually also want to turn on UV. So if you turn on UV, it will use the UVs of your object. So you can see like I have these squares. So those are much like the squares that we saw in Houdini. So I'm going to do noise plug, and we're here. So for that diamond pattern, I found, I don't know why they call it this. It's called snakeskin. I don't know why it's called snakeskin, but it's called snakeskin. I'm just going to say okay for now. So when I turn on this UV plug, there's this mix basic noise and strength. So the mixed basic noise means I'm going to get half of my basic noise and half of my UV plug. So I want to turn I don't want any basic noise, and I just want that UV plug. So there's this plug-in scale, so I can make it bigger, I can make it smaller. I should be able to see more of that. And then I'm going to take my strength up. So now I'm just barely starting to see. There we go. So that's way too big. So I'm going to go back to my noise plug. I'm going to press edit. For some reason, this always comes up on my second monitor. And so I'm going to start playing around with this snakeskin scale. So I don't want random colors. I don't want random variability. I want scale factor. So I'm going to take the scale factor. I'm going to start dropping this until I get the effect I want. And I find this really, really finicky. So what I'll do is I usually start halving this. So this is 10. So I'll go 5, 2, 5, 1. I think that's pretty good. And so this is a little squat. So let's see if I can. Get like a nice tight diamond pattern. Maybe that's a little bit too small. 0.2. That's too big. I'm Goldilocksing now. 1.5. That feels pretty good. So I'm going to say, okay. So now, this is looking at my UVs, and it's putting this really nice checkered pattern onto the surface. And I can change how this works. And this is black, and this is why I can add some, you know, some contrast to this. But what I want to do with this is I want to make this a mask. I basically want to make this a mask and pull out these parts. So I'm going to say okay, and that's going to so this is a visualization of this noise. It's not actually the noise, right? So if I turn this off, like, it's not actually there. And generally when people use this, they when I first started using this, I was like, oh, this looks great, and then I would try to export it. I was like, where's all my noise? This is merely a visualization thing. It's kind of like doing a like a bump map on the fly. It's not actually moving around your geometry. Now, I could apply this, so I can say apply to mesh. So if I say apply to mesh, right, I lose a lot of that detail. So I just don't have enough I don't have enough geometry to hold that noise. So let's undo that. So what I want to do is I'm gonna like divide this guy a few more times. So I'm gonna say Shift D. Geometry. Say divide. So I'm at about 800,000, almost 900,000 points. And maybe we'll go one more. Ooh, that's too much. 3 million. I try to keep this stuff under 1 million, even though I'm in ZBrush. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I want to make this not a noise. I don't want to apply it yet. I want to make it a mask. And I do this a lot. I do almost everything with masking. So I'm going to go surface, and I'm going to go mask my noise. So what that's given me is a mask that is that really nice split pattern. Okay? So what I'll do now is I can take and I can smooth this. I can blur my mask. So I'm going to go down to masking, and I can say blur mask. Just click that once. So now I get these really nice, soft, quilted patterns. Okay. So to control this, to control how this is going to work, what I'm going to do is I'm going to store a morph target, because I don't want this quilting to happen on my edges. Right? I don't want that to happen there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to store a morph target. I'm going to say store morph target. So that'll store this. So morph target is a blend shape in Houdini, just like yeah, a morph target is blend shape in Houdini and in Maya. So what I'm going to do is I am going to now go to deformation, and I'm just going to inflate this thing a little bit. So there I get my quilting. So I think 2 is good. We can try inflate balloon, see if that looks a little bit different. Whoa, too much! Too much! You've gone too far! No! So maybe I'll just type in maybe 0.5. 0.5. Maybe one more. Yeah, that's really good. So now I get this really nice, wonderful, very regimented quilting pattern. So now what I want to do is I want to kind of paint out that quilting pattern along this edge, right? Because if this was an actual piece of cloth, like this would get like kind of tucked into a seam. So that is why I stored my morph target. So my morph target is where that? I have refrigerator blindness right now. Morph target, there it is. So if I can switch back and forth. So what I can do now is I can mask my edges, and I can use my morph brush to morph back to here. So I'm going to mask my edges. So I'm going to go to masking, and I'm going to say mask border. So it might be a little hard to see. My border should be masked. Yep. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to say grow my mask. So get a nice kind of fall off there, and I'm going to blur it a little bit. And so what I'll do now is I'll go into B, M, and I'm going to grab my morph brush, and I'm going to bring my size down, and as I drag over this, it's just going to morph back. That, so maybe a little bit smaller, and make my focal shift really small. So now I can just morph this back to that edge. So this is a little bit easier to do when you have the whole body. In. But that's how I would go about morphing that back and like making those seams. I think I grew my mask a little bit too far. So let's go back. Let's clear our mask. And mask border. Let's see what that does. Oh, I'm silly. I'm sorry. So mask border. I'm gonna grow my mask, and then I want to invert that. Where is it? Inverse. There we go. That's what I wanted. So now I'm getting this nice seam along the edge. Sorry about that. Like I said, talking and doing this stuff, very difficult. just go around, all the way around this edge. So for me, when I'm working on stuff like this, and when I'm doing work like this, it's all about options. It's all about what are my options? What do I have available to me? How much time do I have? What tools do I have available to me? So I try to be as software agnostic as I can. Right now, I'm using Houdini a lot because it serves my purposes. It allows me to be fast and art directable. I've been working with a lot of clients lately. Sometimes they really don't know what they want, so it's always a good idea to be able to be as flexible as you can. And learn to love the process, and you'll be okay. Having trouble getting back upright. There we go. Clear my mask, and there we go. All right. So, yeah, ZBrush and ZBrush and Houdini can work together. Houdini and Maya can work together. Houdini and Blender can work together. Once you kind of realize that that it's all just points and lines, your life becomes much easier. Your life becomes much easier. Okay, the last thing I'm going to do in these last 20 minutes is I want to use one of the. So I just got ZBrush 2021, and I know a lot of you have been asking about the cloth features. I'm getting to those as quickly as I can. So, and maybe in a couple weeks we'll get. I'll get some cloth demos up, yeah, I've just been jamming so hard in Houdini. I've been having a really good time. So I'm really liking the way that I love these patterns. I've grown to love these quilted patterns. So what I want to do is I want to put kind of like a backing on this, and I will be using one of the new features in ZBrush 2021. So fingers crossed, hopefully it works. I want to put a backing on this, but I still want this front kind of quilting bit. So there is one way I can do this. There is dynamic thickness now in Houdini, in ZBrush, which is amazing. Like, everybody's been talking about these cloth tools, and everybody's sleeping on this dynamic thickness, which I think is huge. So I'm going to come into geometry, and I'm going to go into dynamic subdivision. That's where it's under. And I'm going to turn on dynamic subdivision. And by default, it's got this smoothing subdivision set to 2. So I'm going to set that down to 0 because I really don't want any more smoothing. What I want is this thickness, right? I want this thickness. So I'm going to pull this out, and I start to pull this out. You should see this whole thing gets a little bit thicker. Like, it's got this line around the outside. But what I'm getting is these kind of weird blobby things on the inside. So I want the inside of this kind of piece to be smooth. So I'm thinking, like, she's got like that cowl that comes up. I want the inside of that to be relatively smooth, and the outside to have this quilted look. Okay, so there's 2 settings for this. So you can go at 0, it's just going to go in both directions. At negative 100, it's going to go inwards. So everything's going to push inwards, and at positive 100, everything is going to push outwards. So I'm getting kind of like this ballooned effect. So I haven't really tried this. It's been kicking around in my head for a minute. But we'll see what it does. So I'm just going to do 0.00. Actually, I'm going to turn this off. I want 0 thickness. So I'm going to use thickness with a combination of projection. So what I want to do is I'm going to go and grab that original piece of cloth that I made. And so I'm going to go in, I'm going to do append, and I'm just going to append a sphere. so I can import that same piece of cloth. So I'm going to say import, and that was Stream Tunic Retopo. So we'll go back to just standard. So now I have my original here, which I'm going to turn on double-sided. So I can see both sides. And I'm going to go back to my geometry. So I have both of these now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to extrude this guy backwards. Right? I'm going to extrude it in, so it's going to give me thickness. And I'm going to see if I can just get this front face here to project onto my quilted stuff. So we'll see if this works. This is a kind of a big trick. Okay, so first thing I want to do is I want to make sure I have enough polygons to project. So this one is 188. So Control D, D, D. Yeah, so 188. It's the exact same geometry, so it should be almost exactly the same. So now I'm going to go to my geometry, and I'm going to go to dynamic subdivision. I don't want any more subdivisions that I actually have. And my thickness, I'm going to say 0.001, I think I had before. And I think I had 0.002. Maybe 4. Yeah, that's a little bit overkill, but that's fine. And so I want it to, so right now it's going out in both directions. So if I look at this and I turn this on and off, it's going out in both directions. So I want it to just go this way. So which way would that be? Yeah, -100. So if I turn this guy on, so it's sitting right on that front part there. Great. Awesome. So what I'll do now, so once again, like just like the noisemaker, this is just, it's temporary. I can turn it on and I can turn it off. So I want to apply this. And if I turn on my geometry, the great thing about this is it's made me this really nice poly loop around the edge. So that's segments 1. I'm going to do segments 3 because I'm going to see if I can do something tricky with that as well. Okay, so I have this poly line, or this loop around the outside that's very, very regimented. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to apply this. I'm going to make this into real geometry. So I'm going to say, where is it? So I'll say apply. So now this is actual geometry. Right? I can sculpt on this. I can do whatever I want to. And I have these two poly groups. I have this and this. So I'm gonna select that, click it again, and so now these guys are split. And I'm gonna do poly groups. I'm gonna say auto groups. So I have a front group and a back group, and I have this middle piece. So what I want to do is I want to only view my front group. And then I'm going to project just this front group onto this mesh. Okay, so fingers crossed. We'll see if my computer can handle this as well as streaming. So we're going to say, where is it? Project. And let's see. I don't want to project color. I just want to project color. Let's say project all. Fingers crossed. We'll see what happens. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I'm digging that. That is very, very nice. So I projected that front on, and now if I bring back my back side, boom. So now I have that back side all nice and clean. My front side is nice and clean. And then I think what I'll do, let's bring back our polylines. Let's see if I can do this. I want to put a little ridge right on the edge of here. So I'm going to use my Z modeler. So B, Z, modeler. And I'm gonna grab, I'm gonna get really close into here. I'm gonna grab a face. And I'm gonna press spacebar. And you can tell I'm not super comfortable with Z modeler. So I'm gonna do poly loop, and I want to say poly group. I'm gonna go. Nope. I want to go up. Yeah. So there's my poly group, and then I'm gonna just push this inwards. Actually, do I want to push it in or pull it out? Let's pull it out. So click, and we're gonna do inflate poly loop. Oh, it's the wrong way. I'll just pull this out so it gives me a little lip around the edge. That's really nice. Or the other thing I can do, now that I have this, I can just extrude this out. So I get like a little kind of like edge there. So let's do Q mesh. Poly group. Poly group all. So let's do. Oh, may have pushed my luck too far. The Z modeler does not like doing a lot of. Oops. There we go. Does not like doing a lot of polygons. So maybe not Q mesh. Maybe. Extrude poly loop. Doesn't seem to be liking that. Yeah, it was worth a shot. It's worth a shot. The other thing we could do is, so I could take this poly group. And let's do edge. We'll make a new poly group along that edge. Actually, you know what? I think we've done enough for today. I don't know, sit here and fiddle all day. But this is really cool. I find this really, really attractive. The way that we can push stuff back and make kind of like this backing for this quilted piece is really, really fun. That's been kicking around in my head how to do that for quite some time. And you know, if we don't want this stuff, we can just kind of make a big brush and just kind of smooth that stuff out. And I think, oops, because this is subdivided geometry, I may be able to reconstruct my subdivisions. Let's see if it'll let me do it. No, because we did this edge looping here. Wait. Oh, maybe. Yeah, it's not letting me reconstruct the subdivision because of that edge loop. But, in any case, this is really cool. This is very, very cool. Okay, so that's it for me today. So we went over retopology, we went over projecting, we went over using primitive UVs. We did a lot of stuff today. We noisemaker, how to control noisemaker really, really well. The last thing, actually, one more thing before I do, I'll show you how I do. I'm just going to add a little bit more tooth to this with that noisemaker one more time. I got about 10 minutes left, so I'm going to go to surface, noise, and I'm just going to grab just like the default noise. Actually, that looks really nice, so I'm going to say okay. Yeah, so just adding that little bit of noise in there looks really nice. I'll say apply to mesh. I'll do it one more time. Yeah, so we get that nice little like little bit of tooth in there, a little bit of texture, feeling really good. Getting it on the inside as well. If we didn't want that on the inside, if I go back, so let's say we want to keep this inside smooth. I just grab my front poly, say noise, okay, apply to mesh, noise, apply to mesh, and then I can bring back my backside, and that noise will only be applied to what's visible. Pretty cool, pretty dope. All right, I had a good time today. Hopefully you did too. Go to cgspectrum.com for all your questions. Once again, my name is Bryan Bentley, and I will see you next Sunday. Have a good weekend, and have a great rest of the week next week. See you later. Bye-bye.